This lecture accompanies Chapter 15 on the autonomic nervous system. I want to start by reviewing the parts of the nervous system in the two anatomical divisions: the central nervous system, which is the brain and spinal cord, which is encased in bone and floating in cerebral spinal fluid and does most of the central processing. And then the peripheral nervous system, which is nervous tissue outside the central nervous system. It consists of sensory receptors and nerves. And these anatomical divisions can also be further subdivided based on their function. And so the CNS does the processing, stores, and responds from info. And the peripheral nervous system transmits sensory info to the central nervous system and receives motor information. Okay. Furthermore, the peripheral nervous system can be divided into a sensory and a motor division, and that motor division can be divided into somatic, which innervates skeletal muscle, and autonomic divisions. And the autonomic nervous system innervates cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands. And that's what we're going to talk about, are the autonomic nervous system and its divisions: sympathetic, parasympathetic, and I'll say one or two words about enteric stuff, which controls the digestive system, but not much. But these motor divisions work in parallel, but slightly differently. And so I gave you this picture of the guy running from the bear. And so the motor division coordinates the response. And there's a somatic part of that, where the cerebrum is going to direct skeletal muscles to move in a particular way. But there's also an autonomic motor response, which involves other parts of the brain, visceral centers, which are generally in the brainstem and hypothalamus, to control cardiac muscle, smooth muscle, and glands to support the response. And so that's what we're going to deal with. And so it's this autonomic motor system that's going to control other things. And so we've talked a little bit about somatic nerves going to muscles. These generally arise from the ventral part of the spinal cord, the ventral horn, and these motor neurons are going to go directly to the skeletal muscles. But in autonomic nerves, it's different. Autonomic nerves arise from a different part of the gray matter in the spinal cord. More likely it's going to be a lateral area. And then there's two neurons that go to the organ. There's a preganglionic fiber, a synapse, and then a postganglionic fiber. So there's a nerve going to an organ, but it's different because it's got a ganglia and a synapse. And so whenever it's going to a gland or to an organ, there's going to be somewhere a synapse outside the central nervous system. Okay. In addition to these differences in target tissue, there's other differences between the somatic and autonomic systems. The autonomic system has unconscious regulation. It can be influenced by things that go on in the cerebrum, but it's centers like the hypothalamus and the medulla that are controlling it. And instead of always stimulating a muscle contraction, here there can be stimulation or inhibition. This is a two-neuron system, and there is a ganglion somewhere outside the central nervous system. And so you have these synapses, whereas somatic nerves are always going to be myelinated. Only the first preganglionic fiber is myelinated. The second one is not myelinated. And there can be different neurotransmitters and different types of receptors. So this system is, again, a motor system, involves two neurons outside the central nervous system, involves ganglia outside the central nervous system, and a synapse. Their organs are generally going to get dual innervation from the two divisions of this autonomic nervous system. The one division is the parasympathetic division, which controls kind of homeostatic functions, and it gets its response name from rest and digest because it generally promotes those activities. The other division is the sympathetic division that controls a response that gets us ready for action, and it's the fight or flight response. Okay, So, and then this regulation of the autonomic nervous system is primarily done by a couple centers. The most important one is the hypothalamus, um, but there are others, and these are located in the midbrain and in the medulla and in the base of the vagus nerve. There are autonomic reflexes that influence many visceral organs, glands, and blood vessels. These may involve the spinal cord like somatic reflexes, but they may not. They may be these short reflexes that don't involve it. And so you have these reflex activity controlled by centers in the ganglia, spinal cord, and brainstem. These things are influenced by higher brain levels, particularly the limbic centers and the cerebral cortex. They can stimulate or inhibit organs, and sometimes the effects are opposite, but other times they're cooperative. And sometimes these effects can be quite local, but otherwise they can always be general. Okay, so to summarize, the autonomic nervous system is a motor division of the peripheral nervous system and controls many visceral activities. The autonomic nervous system differs in anatomy and function from the somatic motor system. The divisions of the autonomic nervous system coordinate responses from many target organs. Sympathetic division is the fight or flight. The parasympathetic division is the rest and digest. Autonomic nuclei in the central nervous system control most autonomic effects, and these visceral reflexes can maintain homeostasis. Okay, so next time we'll introduce the two divisions more thoroughly, talk about what goes on in sympathetic and parasympathetic systems.